mosque with stories of strength and courage in the face of cold-blooded murder. A stark message is left for Conservative leadership candidate Kelly Leitch, as another contender warns against dangerous rhetoric.
It's leading to cesspools of hate on social media.
Plus, the Liberals abandon a major campaign promise.
How can Canadians trust anything this Prime Minister has to say?
It was a nightmare, one man recalled, but a nightmare he and others at Quebec's Islamic Cultural Centre want fellow Canadians to see in the hopes of stopping hate. They showed the blood, the bullet holes, the places people hid when a man burst in on Sunday night and opened fire. Along with the scenes inside the mosque came stories of fear, survival, and grief that they told to our Alison Northcott.
The emotion was raw as people returned to their place of worship. Despite the bloodstains and bullet holes, some came back to pray for the dead.
C'est notre lieu de culte, c'est notre lieu de paix.
Amel Henchiri is also mourning the loss of what was once a peaceful gathering place.
Ça va nous rappeler que les humains font des erreurs.
Now it will remind us that humans make mistakes, she says, that there are people who can't accept that we are different. Rashid Awam saw the horror unfold.
Après les premiers coups de feu,
Prayers had just ended when he heard gunshots.
à cet endroit-là, il y a vraiment, je te dis, une quinzaine.
This is where he tried to hide, he says, along with 15 others.
J'étais dans ce coin-là.
I was in this corner. I was like this to protect myself. He said the gunman said nothing as he shot at them. His friend was killed just steps away. His brother-in-law shot dead across the room.
Je suis encore touché.
This still affects me, he says. It affects my heart because this mosque is my heart. Here, there are stories of survival and tales of heroism, like the final actions of Azzeddine Soufiane.
He ran quickly to immobilize him, but the attacker was more quick, and he go back and shot him directly in his body, and he fell down here. He fell down. You see here as a hero.
Saeed Akshor is now back home with his family. He was in the shooter's line of fire with nowhere to hide and took a bullet to the shoulder.
Je l'ai vu, il criait pas.
I saw him and he wasn't yelling, he says. It was like he was playing a video game in cold blood.
He was a little guy. He was wearing a coat, a long coat.
Hossein El Manoug says he's certain he saw the suspect and spoke with him at the mosque days before the attack. He says he thought the stranger wanted to learn about Islam, but asked for money. When his picture surfaced after the shooting, it was disturbingly familiar.
I found the photo, the picture of the guy, and that was the same guy. Because I had a discussion with him, and I could see him. He was the same guy that I met Thursday.
Members at the mosque say they opened their doors today to shed light on their tragedy. Many say they will reclaim this space and pray here again. Now the community is preparing to honor the dead. A public funeral will be held for 3 of the victims in Montreal tomorrow, and Quebec City will host another service on Friday where thousands are expected to attend. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Quebec City.
Joel Lightbound is the MP for Louis-Hébert, the riding that is home to the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre. He was with us Monday night in Quebec City talking about the victims, some of whom he knew personally. Today in the House of Commons, he offered his condolences, but also an apology.
Aujourd'hui, je veux aussi leur demander pardon. Pardon d'avoir observé ces dernières années leur ostracisation et leur stigmatisation. D'avoir vu prendre racine dans le cœur de mes semblables la peur, la méfiance et la haine. D'avoir fait de mon mieux pour y répondre, mais de ne pas en avoir fait assez. Parce que si les mots ont des conséquences, les silences aussi ont des conséquences. Plus jamais. Vous êtes à Sainte-Foy chez vous, vous le serez toujours.
One politician who is not apologizing is Kelly Leach, the Ontario MP who wants to be leader of the Conservative Party, all but doubled down again today, insisting her talk of Canadian values and screening immigrants is exactly what Canadians want. David Cochran has the story.
Anger over the Quebec City shootings was directed at Kelly Leach today, as protesters climbed onto the roof of her constituency office in Collingwood to hang this sign, listing the names of the victims and calling on Leach to resign.
Do you have any words that you feel you need to reconsider?
No, I've been talking about a common sense policy.
We must not be afraid to talk about our Canadian values.
The issue is Leach's plan to screen all immigrants for what she calls Canadian values, which her critics say inflames racist and anti-immigrant sentiment. And while Leach is digging in, her opponents are speaking out.
But I think there is a clear link, a clear result between the demagoguery we've seen, not just here in Canada, but in the United States and Europe, and the rise in hate crimes.
We who are going into the position of leadership must be extremely careful of how and what we talk about. We do not want to sow the seeds of hatred in this country or seeds of division in this country.
Leach condemned the Quebec killings on her Facebook page, but it attracted anti-Muslim posts to start deportation and send them all back where they came from, even referring to Muslims as animals. Leach says she isn't appealing to these sentiments directly or indirectly and resents any suggestion she is.
But individuals on my campaign are getting frustrated continually, and whether that be my campaign manager, but quite frankly, many of my supporters, but also many Canadians, don't believe that they are racist because they agree with the policy I'm putting forward.
But this weekend, that same campaign manager, Nick Kouvalis, insulted an academic on Twitter, calling him a cuck, a slur most commonly used by the extreme right and white supremacist groups. Kouvalis later apologized for that tweet, and Kelly Leach says it was a mistake and not something that is reflective of the values of her campaign. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Quebec shooting is still resonating around the world, today being recognized in the British Parliament.
I'm sure that the whole House will join me in offering our condolences to the families and friends of those who lost their lives and were injured in the gun attack in Quebec City on Sunday.
A Toronto businessman has offered to pay for the funerals of the victims. Mohammed Faki also wants to help pay for any repairs to the mosque itself. Protests continue around the world and in the United States against President Donald Trump's temporary travel ban on immigrants from 7 Muslim countries. Today, another giant of the corporate world joined the condemnation, albeit inadvertently. Howard Gould explains.
You don't look like you're from around here. No Clydesdales or lost puppies this time. Instead, the company that makes Budweiser is serving up a Super Bowl ad that is an edgy immigrant's tale of struggle. I want to brew a beer. Welcome to America. We don't want it here. Go back home. When the commercial was being made, Anheuser-Busch couldn't have known it would be airing in the middle of a storm over U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping travel restrictions. But it has chosen to run the ad, not pull it.
Now, I'm all for a touchy immigrant success story.
The beer company is already taking shots.
Your beloved beer commercial this Super Bowl Sunday is liberal propaganda.
But with so many multinational companies willing to take the risk of taking on Trump, it's hard to dismiss them all. Apple is even considering legal action. It's all underlining the politically embarrassing point that the travel restrictions make it harder for companies to do what Trump wants: hire people.
Now I have to say to myself, okay, what is the ethnicity of this person? What about their parents? What about their relatives? Is this potentially going to be an issue? And that is bad for business across the board.
This is unprecedented in at least in the last century of corporate America taking on a president.
Marvin Ryder teaches at the DeGroote School of Business in Hamilton, Ontario. Ryder says global companies need to attract and move around top talent, and they're big enough to do battle when others won't or can't.
You know, if I'm a multinational company like Apple, where I make my revenue around the world, I can take on Donald Trump without any fear. If I was a more regional company or maybe strictly American company, and if I sell more into the heartland where some of Donald Trump's messages around immigration resonate better, I don't know if this is the one I want to take a stand on.
Beer for my friend, please. The Budweiser ad has already been seen by millions online. Thank you. Whether it or any of the other corporate messages will have an impact on Trump's policies is a tough call. But it's likely much will depend on how it all plays with Trump's base.
Welcome to St. Louis, son.
Howard Gould, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, as signs of hate proliferate, are Canadian authorities missing a major source?
Far-right extremism has often been a second thought.
Plus, she left the rat race for a life filled with laughter. Then, things got serious.
The truth is, I believe that laughter is helping save my life.
The Trudeau government crossed another promise off its to-do list today, but not because they got it done. You might recall 2015 was supposed to be the last time a federal government would be elected using first past the post. Justin Trudeau said it a lot both during and after the 2015 election. You won't be hearing that anymore. The CBC's Katie Simpson has the story. Katie.
Peter, the opposition seized on this broken promise, and the Liberals are making no apologies.
The new Minister of Democratic Reform was sent to do the dirty work. Karina Gould confirmed the Liberal government will not be changing the way Canadians vote.
And it has become evident that the broad support needed among Canadians for a change of this magnitude does not exist.
The backtrack triggered anger from the opposition.
I feel more deeply shocked and betrayed by my government today than on any day of my adult life.
Well, I think Canadians should think twice about believing what Justin Trudeau says.
It also prompted pointed exchanges in the House.
How can Canadians trust anything this Prime Minister has to say after he has so blatantly and intentionally betrayed his own word?
I am not going to do something that is wrong for Canadians just to tick off a box on an electoral platform. That's not the kind of the Prime Minister I will be.
Electoral reform has been a problematic file for the Liberals after Justin Trudeau vigorously campaigned on changing the voting system.
We are committed to ensuring that the 2015 election will be the last federal election using first past the post.
A special committee traveled the country to discuss the issue with Canadians, and a majority of its members recommended a referendum on some form of proportional representation. The former minister in charge criticized the committee.
While they did not complete the hard work we had expected them to.
Mariam Monsef was later forced to apologize and was eventually moved out of the portfolio. Today, the Liberals maintain there is no consensus on the issue. The opposition suggests the decision was made for other reasons.
This was not good for the Liberal Party to have a proportional system, is what one, I guess, concludes.
Electoral reform may not be burning up conversations at dinner tables across the country, and some analysts say that may help Trudeau get past this blatantly broken promise.
The multitude of issues that are happening, in the United States with the new Trump regime are going to kind of take some of the heat off him on this issue and probably any other issue.
With electoral reform now out of the picture, the minister in charge will be focusing on other concerns, like protecting Canada's voting system from foreign cyber attacks. Peter.
All right, Katie, thank you. Well, this wasn't the first promise Justin Trudeau has broken since the election. Another big one, to run deficits of less than $10 billion a year and balance the books by 2019. There was also the promise to save home mail delivery, and a promise to immediately invest $3 billion over 4 years to improve home care. The Liberals said they'd reduce the small business tax to 9% from 11%, and that they would scrap the F-35 program. And today, Indigenous Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett told the Commons that the government is ready to negotiate a settlement in the so-called 60s scoop. Between 1965 and 1984, thousands of Aboriginal children were taken from their families and placed in non-native homes. A $1.3 billion class action lawsuit against Ottawa has been going on for years. A 14-year veteran of the Calgary Police Service resigned publicly and in tears last night because she says of the abuse she's suffered with the force.
I have been bullied, sexually harassed, degraded, and chastised. I did not leave the Calgary Police Service. The Calgary Police Service left me. It is with a heavy heart.
Jen Magnus told a Calgary Police Commission hearing that she now fears retribution and retaliation. She's one of two officers who filed complaints about abuse dating back to 2013. Calgary's police chief says he will not accept her resignation. Power crews in New Brunswick are nearly there now, almost done the body-numbing job of restoring power in the farthest reaches of the ice-coated province. But the work, like the ice storm, has taken a toll. The CBC's Harry Forrestal has the story.
Under the cold dawn of the New Brunswick morning, dozens of power crews begin to stir. This, their 8th day of repairing storm-damaged lines. No small task. At the peak of this outage, more than 130,000 were without power. Now, just under 6,000.
We're putting in 16-hour shifts. Everybody's very tired. This morning when we got here, it was minus 20. You know, hard for the people at home without power. Absolutely, we realize that. It's hard for the workers also.
The work is cold and grueling, replacing hundreds of poles that snapped like twigs under the weight of ice last week. 25 on this stretch of road alone.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot of work to do, but the good news for the people in Pigeon Hill, we're here, we're turning linemen, and we're ready to work, and we're all cranked up to put the line back on.
Down the road in Negwak, Joan Como hopes they'll be next. Her daughter Carol is autistic and unable to leave the home. So far, they've managed with the help of relatives and neighbors, but Joan isn't sure how much longer they can hold out.
Hopefully for another couple of days. As long as the restaurants are open and I got a little bit of money, I can go and get something.
It may be days yet before everyone is reconnected. For those who can't manage, the province is directing them to local warming centers in schools and church halls.
There's food at the warming centers. There's other types of medical support. There are things that can really help you with the necessities that you would need during these difficult times.
Some have opted to go it alone with devastating consequences. Emergency measures officials say 2 people have died and 40 others have been hospitalized with carbon monoxide poisoning, the result of using poorly ventilated wood stoves, generators and barbecues to stay warm. Harry Forrestal, CBC News, Fredericton.
There's an update today on a tip line to fight tax evasion. The Offshore Tax Informant Program was set up in 2014. The Canada Revenue Agency says more than 20 informants supplied key information. There have been 218 audits and more than $1 million has been collected in reassessments and penalties.